This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello, I'm Gabriella Power. Welcome to Power Hour. What a show we have coming up for you today, because there are multiple stories that were not too long ago labelled conspiracy theories and were majorly censored that have now been confirmed to be facts. The FBI has admitted in court that Hunter Biden's laptop is real, a story that was initially dismissed as Russian disinformation around the time of the 2020 election. And Dr. Anthony Fauci has admitted there were no clinical trials to back up the social distancing rules during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, in some ways, it's incredibly hard to hear this because this is what we needed almost 4 years ago, and we all know the damage that has been done. But it's important that we recognise the truth that is finally coming to light and unpack it all here on Power Hour. Plus, the UK general election is 1 month away and Nigel Farage is shaking things up in what has been labelled a boring election campaign so far. And Riley Sullivan will bring us up to speed on all the royal news. Let's go to the US. We are joined by comedian Alex Stein. Alex, how are you? And is everything okay in the United States? Because a fair bit has happened since we last spoke, including former President Donald Trump has become a convicted felon after a New York jury found him guilty for falsifying business records. Can I get your reaction? And how are people over in Texas reacting?
Well, listen, Gabriella, I have to tell you the truth. You know what they want? The people that are doing this sham prosecution of Donald Trump is they want people to protest. They want people to kind of repeat January 6th. So what's going to happen? I thought it was not going to happen that he was convicted. But now that he's convicted, I really do think that they want to put him in jail. And I think the outcome of him going to jail, Gabriella, will be protests and another January 6th type situation. And even though people are going to be a little more hesitant because of the prosecution of the Department of Justice against Americans that thought the election was stolen, they're still going to do it because they're going to be so mad, because it doesn't make any sense when you have people like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Barack Obama that use FISA warrants to spy on Trump. I mean, they're presidents. They've all committed crimes. And this is just them locking up their political opponent.
I think there's a lot of noise about the hypocrisy around all of this. But if Donald Trump is put behind bars, what will that do to his support base? Because we've just seen the amount of money that has been donated to Donald Trump since he was found guilty.
Well, it's only going to help him. And then if you look at his TikTok, I believe Joe Biden has been on TikTok for years, and I think he only has about 400,000. Donald Trump has over 5 million TikTok followers and only having the account, I believe, like 72 hours. So, I mean, there's a lot more support. I mean, people have to remember Donald Trump got, a ton of votes last year. In 2020, and he's going to get a lot of votes this time. But I think it's just going to come down to dead people and illegal immigrants voting for Joe Biden that could swing it in Joe Biden's favor. So we're just going to have to see. But here in America, a lot of people have lost their faith in the election system.
Why is Donald Trump on TikTok? I saw the amount of people that are now quick to follow him. I'm personally not on TikTok. Are you, Alex?
Well, I have a person that runs a TikTok. I don't ever go on TikToks. But it's funny. I look at Instagram, so I see TikToks on Instagram. But I mean, if Donald Trump went on there and did some, funny dance, renegade, I think that's a big TikTok dance, he would go mega viral. But yeah, I think he's just trying to appeal to the young people, right? Pandering, I guess.
Okay.
There's my cat, Skybear. Did you hear my cat? Skybear, come here.
Is your cat going to make an appearance?
I know. I wish. Let me go grab him. Oh my gosh, cat, come here, Skybear, come here. He's yelling, going crazy. Let me grab him. Oh my gosh.
Okay, you get the cat. And look, while we're waiting for your cat, I don't know if you can still hear me. There we go.
He gets so mad when I'm doing interviews. And he wants all the attention. This is Skybear. This is my #1 ranked cat, but he's not going to shut up unless I give him attention. So I apologize, Gabriella, for the loud interruptions.
Your cat is absolutely welcome to be a guest on Power Hour at any point in time. Thank you for making that appearance. Very cute. What does your cat make
look at the camera
of Donald Trump becoming a convicted felon?
Well, my cat has 9 lives, kind of like Donald Trump. And you know that Donald Trump will only come out of this stronger. And he's going to have Secret Service protection. But allegedly and supposedly that they're working in Congress to create some sort of bill where they could strip him of his Secret Service. So if that happens, then it's basically like an execution of the president, in my opinion.
Yeah, I heard Tucker Carlson speaking to Donald Trump Jr. about that if he was to take away that security, that is essentially a death threat.
Yeah, and Tucker Carlson's my biological stepfather. We have to bring up that. Tucker and I are very good friends, and he's actually the reason probably why I'm on Sky News. He put me on the map when he put me on Fox News. So Tucker Carlson is the smartest journalist in the world. So if he was talking about that with Don Jr., you better believe it and take that to the bank.
Yeah, I really enjoy listening to his podcasts, and that's great that he's brought you over to Sky News. Let's talk about Hunter Biden. The FBI has admitted in court that the Hunter Biden laptop is real. So if we go back to October 2020, the headline from Politico reads, "The Hunter Biden story is disinformation, dozens of former intel officials say." So that story initially was dismissed as Russian disinformation. Many press outlets refused to report it. But if we fast forward almost 4 years to now, this is the NBC News headline. It reads that Hunter Biden's trial highlights. FBI agent testifies about Hunter Biden's drug use and large cash withdrawals. So two massive stories that were essentially censored and are now coming to light. Of course, the stories around COVID-19 restrictions and now this story about Hunter Biden. Are you pleased to see that this is now finally, it's finally being acknowledged that this story is real?
Well, obviously this thing was real from the start. I mean, people had published it, had been hacked, and so we knew it was real the whole time. And they had a bunch of disinformation agents that work for the FBI that said it was fake. And I mean, really, do I feel happy? No, because it shows you that not only was the mainstream media censored, New York Post shared this on Twitter saying it was real and they were censored. So social media companies are heavily censored. So it just makes me lose all faith in, getting information. And, this is the thing. A lot of people ask me, like, why do I support Donald Trump? I get it. Like in 2016, I was like, this Donald Trump guy's crazy. I mean, I liked him. I wanted him to win, but every single mainstream media outlet said he had a 0% chance to win. The New York Times on the day of the election said Hillary Clinton was a 99% chance to win. And they were wrong. And that just showed me that the media lies. And so, I'm not saying Sky News is liars. I think you guys actually do honest reporting compared to 99% of these other freaking outlets.
Thank you.
At the end of the day, we just know that that was real and that the media lied, Twitter lied, the FBI lied. And so do I feel good about it? I mean, I guess a little bit, but it's a catch-22. Like, it's kind of bad that I'm wrong. I wish this was all fake. I wish that I wish the president's son wasn't a crackhead selling our secrets to, foreign adversaries. But that's the reality of the situation. And will he go to jail? Maybe. He's in court right now for owning a gun while being a drug addict. So I wouldn't be surprised, but his dad's going to pardon him anyway. We have a two-tier justice system, and it's really unfortunate.
Alex, you've been getting around at Pride Week. I've seen a few clips on X, making lots of friends. Here's one clip that I found when he met with Gays for Palestine.
Let me hear it for the gays. Let me hear it for the gays.
Are there pride parades in Palestine?
I will not talk to the media. Be free.
Gays are not allowed to be in Palestine. You know that.
That pink box.
Scaring everyone.
I'm not scaring anyone.
You use your body, right?
Use my body. Yeah, you're using your body.
I get it, but look at us.
People are being bombed by Israel. You're not my boss. Thank you.
Alex, what was that like?
Well, that was one of the less scary ones because the real Palestinian protests, the Gays for Palestine, they kind of have to do theirs separate. And that was at the Dallas Pride event. And, they were a little feisty, but they were actually pretty nice. And they were on so many, hormone blockers that there wasn't a lot of testosterone in that crowd. So I had the most. So I wasn't too worried. But really, when I go there and I try to talk to people, it's the hypocrisy. I do kind of understand their position, but in a way, I also don't understand it at all, because if all of them or any of them went to the Gaza Strip, they could literally be thrown off a roof. And that's not hyperbole. That's not a joke. And that's a sad reality in which we live in, that the country that they're protesting for, the area that they're protesting for, would not accept their lifestyle. So they're complaining about Israel and Palestine when they should have some gratitude where they are here in America. And that's the problem, is that even though things are kind of bad, America, we don't have enough gratitude. And I think that's a problem with young people especially.
I completely agree, and you're seeing that in parts of Australia as well. Could you get through to anyone? Could anyone see the light that there was a contradiction in what they were protesting about?
Well, you saw that. I mean, I need to put out a longer version, but those two guys kind of had an argument because it shows you that the left will eat their own. And so, yeah, that guy did want to talk about it. And he knows, that they're not stupid. They've researched, they know what goes on in the Gaza Strip, and they just choose to overlook how they would be treated. So they didn't want to talk. They didn't want to answer questions, and they just wanted to disrupt. And you know what? I don't blame them because they're protesters, right? They're professional activists, basically. It's just sad that when they get asked a hard question, they shut their mouth or they just chant, something over and over so that they won't have to actually answer it.
There you go. Look, I want to ask you about what's going on in your latest podcast episode, Primetime with Alex Stein, because I believe you go into the details of MH370. What can you tell us? Is there new evidence? Can you give us a little bit of a preview?
Well, this guy, Ashton Forbes, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he is he's a crazy guy. Let's just be real. He's a conspiracy theorist, but he wasn't a conspiracy theorist until he started looking into MH370. And basically, I'm not saying that I believe him, but, his evidence is that there's a video that plays where there are some, orbs that circled the plane and that it went into basically a teleportation Stargate, and that it didn't go to space, it didn't go to a different dimension, that it's here on Earth. And he says it's at Diego Garcia military base. Now, I know all this sounds crazy. I'm not saying you should believe it, but this guy does, show some military documents about how they are working on things like called Stargates, and they are working on this technology. So listen, I don't know, the people that are watching this, if you're a UFO lover, a UFO hater, I don't know if they're real or fake, but this guy seems to think that this is American technology or human technology that is able to teleport an airplane. So it sounds crazy, but he makes the best case. He's a nerd. He gives it a rundown. It is some high, I don't even know how to say it. I mean, you have to almost have a physics degree to understand what he's saying, but it's interesting. So if you guys want to watch it and learn some conspiracies about it, because the official story, I'll be honest, doesn't make sense, is that it just disappeared and they don't know. And so some of the story, like whether you believe that it was teleported, I don't necessarily believe that, but there were some weird stuff that supposedly there's a bunch of lithium ion batteries there that they didn't disclose until later. And those could have caught fire, and it could have just, the plane could have caught fire, and they could have, could have crashed in the ocean. I'm not saying that happened either, but there's a lot of different theories. And this guy is an expert, quote unquote expert, when it comes to this. So really interesting. I had not been following him, but he's gained about 100,000 Twitter followers in the last few months because he's been going so viral with this evidence. So, if you guys like conspiracy theories, definitely look at it. Do I 100% believe it? I'm still on the fence for sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to be listening to it. Alex, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. And a big thank you to your cat. Your cat is welcome anytime.
Sky Bear, I'll spread the message. He'll watch this. We'll watch this together, and he'll definitely enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to speak with you. Joining us now is finance entrepreneur and geopolitics expert, Dr. Roger Girob. Roger, great to speak with you again. Let's start with the UK, where a major shakeup has rocked the upcoming election. Former Brexit leader Nigel Farage has called for a political revolt, announcing his candidacy as the leader of the Reform UK party. Let's take a look.
So I'm coming back as leader of Reform UK, but not just for this election campaign. I'm coming back for the next 5 years. And there is one very simple reason for that. We all know already that the Conservative Party will be in opposition. But it won't be the opposition. They are incapable of it.
Roger, the election is less than a month away. What impact is this going to have?
Tremendous impact. They've already moved up to within 2 points of the Conservatives, the Reform Party has. So at the very least, they're going to do a lot of damage. We have the first past the post system here, as it's called. So it's very difficult for any political party other than the Conservatives or Labour to actually get into government and run things, even come in and be a hung parliament with any kind of power. But the way things are going, you never know. So many people are deserting the Tories, the Conservatives, for Labour and Reform. And I think it looks to me like more people are deserting for Reform now. So I think Nigel is going to do a lot of damage at the very least.
Former Neighbours star Holly Valance has thrown her support behind Nigel Farage. Let's take a look.
This is exactly what we all wanted. He gave the people what they asked for. Right move.
Roger, what do you make of her comments? Do you think Holly will have an impact, and are we likely to see her out in the campaign trail?
I don't know. I mean, you know, all sorts of celebrities get involved and throw their 2 cents in. Robert De Niro has gone crazy over Trump. I mean, you know, a lot of these people who aren't directly involved or experienced in politics should kind of stay in their zone. I don't know about Holly. She's quite a good spokesperson and a lovely celebrity, so I'm sure she'll influence quite a lot of people, and it certainly doesn't hurt to have her support, so I'm all for it. But some of them who are jumping on the bandwagon are, you know, kind of silly.
It's a fair point. Look, Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak went head-to-head in their first TV debate of the campaign. Let's take a look.
What I won't do is engage in an expensive gimmick, the Rwanda scheme. If he believed it was going to work, he wouldn't have called an election before it could be tested. He wouldn't have done it.
Would you consider processing asylum claims in a third country, Keir Starmer?
Yes, if that was possible to do it in compliance with international law, of course. But just let me deal with this, because...
So you do now agree?
Okay, so you...
Honestly,
now, you've just changed your
I thought we
mind
were
on
not
this.
going to talk over each other.
So you do now agree with third country deals?
Roger, what did you get out of the debate, and in your view, who won?
I got a really good kip, and then when I woke up, I wasn't sure who won. It was completely boring, like listening to these two all the time. It's just so empty and vacuous and insipid, and neither of them really says anything. And when they do finally say something, they don't deliver on it. And it was pretty pathetic as far as I'm concerned. Nigel brings a lot more, a lot more energy to the process. And these two, it was like watching 2 Dyson electric heaters on full throttle just blowing at each other, you know. I finally decided to turn off the telly, and I washed my shirt and thought I'd watch that dry instead.
Well, Nigel Farage was making headlines here in Australia while the debate was going on because a milkshake was thrown at him. Are we going to see him take up a fair bit of the spotlight over the next few weeks?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, the Reform Party is gaining such momentum. And, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, they're the Messiah and they're going to solve everything. Just another bunch of politicians, and they're all quite boring sometimes, I think. And they all, you know, operate in a politician's kind of a way. But Nigel, as he said in an interview I did with him about why our politicians are so bad, he said it's because so many of them are professional politicians. And, you know, he's not really one of those. He's not so phony, if I can put it like that. So I think he'll cover a lot of ground. He's done a lot of damage. He will do a lot of damage to the Tories. There was a post on X today by somebody I called a Labour agent provocateur, who said that now, with all the damage Farage is going to do to the Tories, Labour will have a clean brief. They're in clear blue water and it's all lovely. And I posted back saying, don't listen to this idiot, because Labour isn't even a party. It's an agglomeration of warring groups trying to cover up the blood and the noise going on over anti-Semitism, communism, socialism, you know, God knows what else these people get up to. So the whole thing is a mess, and everybody's sick of it, and they can't wait for it to be over. And I guess we'll end up, I mean, a lot of people are saying Labour, you know, there's no question they'll be in. A lot of people are saying, don't be so surprised. We might end up stuck with Fishy Rishi again. And a small number of people are saying, Nigel could actually win this. So, you know, it's at least exciting in that sense that now it isn't a foregone conclusion anymore.
It'll be interesting to watch that unfold. Why do you think more people seem to be gravitating towards the Reform UK party? And what is it about Nigel Farage? Is it because he's a bit controversial? Can he really cut through in his messaging, I suppose, out in the campaign trail? And why is it that he will be making such an impact throughout this election campaign?
Well, there's a lot of questions in there, Gabriella, but I guess the best way to answer them all is, firstly, the Tories have been in power for 14 years, and they've really made a god-awful mess. I mean, they put their foot in their mouth every morning before breakfast. Sex scandals, stealing, corruption, incredibly stupid decisions, idiots making pronouncements that, they then fight with each other over. I mean, it's just been abysmal. I mean, it would make anybody not want to go into politics watching them. It's embarrassing. They have absolutely destroyed the Tory party repeatedly and repeatedly for 14 years. Labour has basically stood by and not really come forth with any policies that make sense. They're now starting to announce some things, but everybody is scared to death. Well, everybody except Labour supporters is scared to death of Labour coming in. Jeremy Corbyn's hiding in the wings, more crazy stuff, socialist stuffs, soak the rich, spread the wealth, redistribute it. We are, as one of my followers posted, left with a choice between stepping in dog muck or cat muck.
Well, Roger, we'll be getting your insights and analysis as we edge closer to July 4. I want to talk to you about China. There are concerns that China is set to become increasingly aggressive on the world stage as fears mount over whether the country is gearing up to invade Taiwan. The Chinese Defence Minister declared in a fiery speech at a Singapore Security Forum that the country's military is ready to forcefully prevent Taiwan's independence. Roger, what's your reaction to this?
My reaction is that there's a lot of saber rattling going on by them, as there is obviously by President Putin. And that's essentially because they see how weak Joe Obama Biden is. His latest escapade of basically backing off, obfuscating his support for Israel and conflating the Israelis and Hamas as kind of equal combatants who should stop fighting, really was appalling and will be seen by China as just more weakness in the Obama and Biden camp. So they're going to push the envelope as far as they can. It's like the schoolyard bully who keeps, banging you a bit more every day to just see how far he can go. But I don't think he's going to break your nose in front of the teacher. I don't think that China will invade. I think they want to keep the cross-strait dialogue, which has been going on forever and is meant to result in the eventual one-day unification of China and Taiwan, going for as long as possible. There's a number of reasons why I don't think they'll invade. Despite what everybody's saying and how it looks in World War III, blah, blah, blah. Number one, I think, is that China takes comfort in what's called the One China policy, which is that Taiwan is part of China. Taiwan belongs to China. They aren't two separate countries. Now, Australia, the United States, United Kingdom, a lot of other countries acknowledge but don't accept or approve, talk about weasel language, the One China policy. So they're basically saying, okay, you claim it's your country. We're not going to argue with you about it right now. They don't say they accept it. They don't say they approve it. But what they say is they're not going to oppose it. So that means that China can take comfort in that isn't identified like Russia by the international community as a bad actor. Second factor is that Taiwan has got a ruddy, massive defense capability. You don't want to mess with them. Thirdly, an invasion across the Taiwan Strait is no easy feat. Fourthly, there's no beaches to land on. Where the hell do you land? It's a real problem. And I think, money always talks. And I think the main thing is semiconductors and chips and superconductors. Taiwan is where they're made. And if that were to be disrupted and those factories damaged or closed or into the wrong hands, the world economy would fall apart, and China's automotive industry, electrical appliance, I mean, just about everything, internet would be affected. So China can't afford that to happen more than anyone else can. So I think those are the reasons at the end of the day that they won't attack.
I suppose that is comforting that we're not going to be, in your view, seeing an attack anytime soon. I want to speak to you about Israel. It's been 243 days since Hamas terrorists attacked Israel. And of course, it's just so important that the world does not forget about the hostages who are still in captivity. We have heard from one Israeli woman, Lishay Lavin-Miran, who shared this clip on X saying that she is still waiting for her husband and her daughters are still waiting for their father. Roger, how is it that these hostages have not been able to come home yet?
I'm so sorry. I just have to say one word because I don't want to mislead our viewers about China. I was just going to add that Taiwan needs to play the game as well. China has made it very clear if Taiwan makes a declaration of independence, they will invade. So, you know, if Taiwan does push things, that could happen. As far as the hostages go, it's just amazing. You know, one is hearing reports these days recently in the past week about the massive number of Muslims killed in wars and battles in other countries, and nobody's out on the street protesting about it. Nobody's complaining about it. Nobody's demonstrating. You know, I mean, 600,000 people killed by Assad and 600,000 Muslims and all these terrible figures. And they're all talking about the hostages. They're all talking about the Gazans and the Palestinians who, you know, seem to be held in position by Hamas and used as human shields. And that's the reason for the casualties. The aid coming in is being stolen and sold by Hamas instead of distributed, apparently. And, you know, they're just behaving absolutely appalling. But, you know, nobody talks about the hostages. It's unbelievable. And you have all these world leaders at the UN and all these places in the ICC. We want a ceasefire right now, but they don't mention the hostages. And you know, how can anybody begin a conversation for a ceasefire with an enemy that says they're going to kill you the next day? So the whole thing is just bewildering.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't understand why so much of the conversation seems to ignore the fact that there are still close to 100 hostages being held by Hamas terrorists. Look, finally, Roger, before I let you go, I want to talk to you about a decision that has happened here in Australia. Australia's e-safety commissioner has dropped her case against Elon Musk's ex over footage of an alleged stabbing at a Western Sydney church. Julie Iman-Grant said after weighing multiple considerations, including litigation across multiple cases, I have considered this option likely to achieve the most positive outcome for the online safety of all Australians, especially children. Elon Musk has reacted to this on X and has essentially been saying that this is a win for free speech. Roger, what are your thoughts on the whole case?
Yeah, I tend to agree with him. I was quite shocked to see Albo's video where he just kept calling him this bloke and this billionaire in a very sort of derogatory tone. I mean, Musk, I guess, could keep saying this politician, you know, this Paul, this Polly. I mean, it was terrible. I wasn't impressed with Albo there at all. I think it is a blow for free speech because I don't like the idea of an unelected Australian official saying what can and cannot be seen on the internet by me. You know, if I don't want to watch something, I can choose not to watch it. I'm a grown-up, and I don't need some nanny who I didn't even vote for, you know, telling me what I can do. I think that she withdrew the suit. that was a lot of waffle about, in the best interest of blah. I mean, what happened, she was piled on by ex-supporters, something like 180 million people. She received death threats. Her kids were doxxed. They really didn't like it. Whether Elon put them up to that or not, I don't know. But I mean, it's just out of order. And Albo just kept saying this guy should know better. And even if it's not the law, he should behave properly, socially, etc. Well, yeah, okay. Thanks, Albo. But I mean, where do you draw the line exactly? If you and I don't agree on something, well, why do you get to say it has to be pulled? You've got to, she should have stayed in court at least, where she probably would have lost the case.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people respect Elon Musk and are gravitating towards X, is because it's against censorship. Roger G. World, thank you so much for your time. Great to speak with you.
Great to speak with you. Thank you.
Let's cross to Washington, D.C. Journalist Emily Jashinsky joins us now. Emily, great to speak with you. Can we start with one of the biggest issues in America right now, and that is the crisis at the southern border? Before we get into what Joe Biden has announced this week, let's take a look at what he said about the crisis in January.
Just give me the power. I've asked for the very day I got in office. Give me the border patrol. Give me the people. Give me the people, the judges. Give me the people who can stop this and make it work for us.
Now, 5 months out from the November election, Joe Biden has decided to act. Let's take a listen.
I'm moving past Republican obstruction and using the executive authorities available to me as president to do what I can on my own to address the border. Frankly, I would have preferred to address this issue through bipartisan legislation, because that's the only way to actually get the kind of system we have now that's broken, fixed, to hire more Border Patrol agents, more asylum officers, more judges. But Republicans have left me no choice.
So now migrants caught illegally crossing could be quickly deported or turned back. What do you make of the timing of this announcement, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, it's very cynical because Joe Biden has obviously had the power to do this all along. He's invoking executive authority, actually, that Donald Trump himself invoked. And it's true, the border really does need bipartisan, comprehensive legislation in order to really rehaul the system. I mean, the way the system works right now in the United States means that a president can come in and decide to tweak it at their will with things exactly like executive actions, executive orders. Barack Obama did this several times with the border, actually, and Donald Trump sort of followed the lead on that question. But without the Senate, Joe Biden could act, and he said he couldn't, before that bill had even been discussed. So when you have conservative estimates putting border crossings somewhere around 4 million, about 3.9 million was a conservative estimate that one analyst forwarded today. Again, that's conservative. It could actually have been many more crossings over the course of the Biden administration. But that's a huge number. And what Biden is doing now is capping asylum claims at about 2,500 a day when people come and cross the border and try to get entry into the United States. His own Homeland Security Secretary, when he was the vice president under Barack Obama, said 1,000 crossings a day would constitute a, quote, crisis. So now capping it and acting like this limit is some sort of severe border action. I mean, it's only severe relative to how severely open the borders have been for the past several years.
It's hard to comprehend that figure, 2,500 people a day for 7 consecutive days, and then it's all of a sudden declared to be overwhelmed, and then those restrictions will actually take place. But I was watching some of the reporters actually on the ground there. Many of them say that they're sceptical that this is going to have a dramatic impact, I think was the wording around that. What's your take?
I think that's exactly right, because if you look at how this executive action includes exemptions, it's really, really interesting. For example, it exempts unaccompanied minors from making these asylum claims, or if they're exempt from the caps, they can still continue to make asylum claims. We have seen that become a loophole for a lot of cartels, actually, to get money to traffic unaccompanied minors. Their parents want them to have more opportunity in the United States, so they will pay cartels to traffic their kid up to the border. That's extremely common. The other thing is there's a broad trafficking exemption. If you look at the U.S. Code, basically almost every migrant at this point can make a claim that they should be exempt from this cap because of trafficking. Basically, if you talk to migrants, they will tell you, I've done this myself, every single one of them has paid. There may be an exception here or there, but they're all paying just to be in certain parts of Mexico before they cross the border. Everyone is trafficked. And so if you want to go and make a claim that you should be exempt from this because you were trafficked, you now can do that. There are, it can't just obviously be any person. You have to meet some criteria, but it's really hard to know how the Biden administration is actually going to interpret this executive order. And they're not typically very forthcoming about asylum claims. We really have to struggle to get numbers. The American press has to struggle to get numbers out of the Biden administration on asylum. So it's just really very hard to know.
Yeah, and it's really alarming. Obviously, immigration is such an important issue for Americans with this election coming up in November. Now Biden has made this announcement. I feel like it actually just puts the spotlight on what is happening at the southern border even greater, I suppose. Do you think that this is going to affect his chances at the polls? Do you think people actually are going to believe what he's saying, that he's making positive impact, or is it actually kind of exposing how bad the crisis really is?
I can see a world in which there are some maybe left-leaning independent voters for whom this is part of what makes them comfortable voting for Joe Biden. If he makes overtures to, people that are down the middle, independent, they might think of themselves as common sense voters, because the media honestly does a pretty bad job of covering this in America. We've seen a lot of headlines talking about Biden's, strict border crackdown and all of that. So maybe it does work with some people on the margins. Overall, though, I think that's right, because this has been going on for years now under Joe Biden. For the average American voter, the fact that he has basically presided over open borders, that we've had these images, indelible images of children, of people flooding in. There's so many communities that have been touched by crime that's been perpetrated by people who are not supposed to be in this country or who have made dubious asylum claims. That's really happened all over the United States and on Joe Biden's watch. So I actually do think that it's probably too late for him to dissuade most voters of that notion.
Okay, well, we'll wait and see. Emily, I want to talk to you about Hunter Biden and the trial that you've been following closely. We've heard that from Hunter Biden's ex-wife and a former girlfriend who's testified at his criminal trial about finding his crack pipes and other drug paraphernalia as he fights a gun charge in a court in the US state of Delaware. The trial is about whether he lied on a gun purchase form in 2018 when he said he wasn't using drugs. Emily, what's Hunter Biden's defense here?
Yeah, that he, at the moment he said he wasn't using drugs, wasn't using drugs. But of course, there's evidence actually from his own memoir, from his laptop, that he was at the time using drugs. And when I say at the time, I don't mean the precise moment so much as I mean that he was clearly an addict in the days before and after, because we don't have, a text message from the exact moment that Hunter Biden signed on to that form. But we do have plenty of evidence in his own words from his own property that he was struggling with, for example, crack addiction. I mean, it's really ugly stuff. It's in very close proximity to when the form was signed. And so it's hard for him to wiggle out of it. But that is the defense that he's making right now, that at the time he signed the form, he didn't expect to relapse. He didn't expect to fall prey to addiction again. Definitely pulling at people's heartstrings as part of the defense as well. So hard to know if that will work because there's so much graphic evidence of Hunter Biden's drug use in a very short window of time. But I guess there isn't anything at the exact second the form was signed.
How likely is it that we could actually see Hunter Biden behind bars?
Behind bars is another question than whether I guess he's convicted on these charges because, Delaware, friendly area for the Bidens, court system we've actually seen be fairly friendly to Hunter Biden. This is the same case that a judge was so confused by the prosecutor's lenience to Hunter Biden last year that she kind of paused the case at the moment and said, what's going on exactly? Is this the prosecution? So I don't know that, if he's convicted, he actually ends up behind bars. I do think that it's hard for him to avoid being convicted. I'm sure this is a very friendly jury. I don't know how he can wiggle out of it. But if I had to put money on it, I would say he's convicted. I don't know that he actually ends up behind bars, though.
Okay. And how's this trial actually impacting his father, Joe Biden? Are people interested in it? Is it having an effect?
Yeah, I think people are interested in it. I think what makes people more interested in it is actually how little attention that the media pays to it compared to other cases, particularly Trump cases. It makes people feel like something's being hidden from them. And to an extent, it is. I mean, the media has really not wanted to talk about this trial, especially because the Biden family is very in favor of gun restrictions. And here you have the president's son pretty flagrantly violating not just gun law, which they're very, very much in favor of, but also just safe gun practices. So it does feel like a double standard. It does feel like glaring hypocrisy. And on top of that, I mean, just the salacious nature of the laptop, of the memoir, that stuff always is going to catch a certain amount of the population's attention. It's hard to look away.
Absolutely. And now the FBI has admitted that the Hunter Biden laptop is real after years of being dismissed as disinformation. Look, the Hunter Biden trial is unfolding after Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felonies in New York City. Emily, can I, first of all, so much is happening over in America. Can I get your reaction to that outcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was entirely predictable. It was a jury in Manhattan, so the likelihood that he was going to be convicted, I would have put money on it. I didn't, but if I would have been right, because it just it seemed like there was also even just some of the evidence that was allowed in. This judge, by the way, actually donated a small amount of money to Democrats, which is a strange thing for a judge to do. It just looked like it was never going in Trump's favor, even though the legal questions about the underlying nature of the prosecution, I think, are extremely serious. That you have the statute of limitations passing, so a prosecutor who ran on a partisan ticket then trumps up the charges, no pun intended, actually, to be felonies when they would typically be misdemeanors because they're in the service or in the furtherance of a separate crime. But Donald Trump was not charged with that underlying crime, which is a very, very strange thing to do. Even MSNBC was calling this a novel legal theory. Questions were raised in the New York Times about the wisdom of this novel legal theory. So it just, in court, though, seemed as though what had gone through the legal process, what had actually gotten to the jury, was going to go against Trump.
I obviously got your opinion on whether or not we'll see Hunter Biden put behind bars, but what's your take on whether we'll see Donald Trump actually sentenced to prison?
It's a really, really hard question to answer, and partially because I just don't want to answer it because I'm not super optimistic. I don't think it's obviously a good thing for the country to see a former president behind bars, especially because this is somebody who ran on, basically was announcing his presidential run as James Comey was. And a lot of people in the United States still see letting Hillary Clinton off the hook, the other opponent off the hook. And Hunter Biden obviously has not been. They let the statute of limitations elapse on his Foreign Agents Registration Act prosecution or the potential for those charges to be brought. So it doesn't feel like a healthy place that the United States is in. So I kind of don't even want to think about it. But I will say I think that it's not a zero possibility. I think there's a significant chance. I'm not saying it's greater than 50%. Maybe it's around 30%. Because this is a judge, by the way, who donates, as a judge, who gives such a small amount of money to Democrats for political purposes. It's sort of a big breach of decorum. So it feels like there's a real possibility that Judge Juan Merchan he very much wants to, he has a partisan kind of opinion on whether Donald Trump is good for the country. And that could certainly lead to him being behind bars. He has a really strong case on appeal. Some legal analysts think that it should go all the way up to the Supreme Court. I think it is likely that he has a strong case for appeal, but his sentencing is 4 days before the Republican National Convention. There would be just so much drama surrounding it. And that might even, make the judge more likely to slap him with a charge or to slap him with a sentence in prison because he doesn't want it to look like he's getting off easy right before the convention and before he's nominated.
Yeah, that's true. We'll, of course, have to wait and see. Insane times in America at the moment. Well, the first major swing state poll following Trump's guilty verdict found a solid lead for the Republican candidate. According to the poll, Georgia voters found Trump. Well, they favour, rather, Trump over Biden, 49% to 44%. Emily, why do you think that is?
Yeah, these polls are really important. And one thing I also think is worth noting is that Joe Biden is out there campaigning just like he did in 2020, with this major theme of decency, civility, normalcy, lowercase d, democracy. To a lot of voters, actually, I think this prosecution of a president, which is unprecedented, as everyone basically understands and admits and concedes, that feels like chaos to people. It doesn't help Biden make this argument that he is the guy for stability and calm and normalcy. So in a way, I think this can really backfire on Joe Biden. I think it fires up Trump supporters. I think for the average voter, it's kind of baked into the Trump cake. He ran, I mean, you can go back, pull the clips of him saying, I alone can fix the American system because I know it. I'm part of it. So I think Trump always had this kind of like, borderline white collar malfeasance, thing to him. He was sort of always open that he gamed the system in the United States. He wasn't out there saying, hey, I'm a criminal, but he was saying basically, I know how corruption works. So I don't think it does move most voters. I do think it really fires up Trump supporters. And I also think that it gives maybe some of those, again, Dem-leaning independents pause as to whether Joe Biden's actually the candidate of normalcy and decency and democracy.
We are going to see Joe Biden and Donald Trump go head-to-head in a debate at the end of the month. What can we expect?
Yeah, Biden always performed in those debates in 2020 better than I expected him to, given the way he performs. Often on the campaign trail, he seems to, as everyone is familiar with, we've seen the videos when he's president, when he was running, to struggle getting through like normal human interactions, loses his place in the middle of questions. We didn't really see that version of Joe Biden show up to the debates. Maybe it's because it's a short time span, it's more controlled. I would expect him to be ready to rumble with Donald Trump and maybe surprise some people. Again, people can make an argument for why he's able to perform so well in a debate. I don't know what the answer is. I think maybe it is a more controlled setting, but he has generally overperformed expectations. Donald Trump is actually fighting for his life at this point. He's fighting to stay out of prison because if he becomes president, he can pardon himself. So that, puts the stakes at a different level for him. So maybe we see a calmer Donald Trump, a more serious, a grave Donald Trump, knowing that, his life is at stake actually this time around.
Yeah, perhaps. We will, of course, wait and see. Emily Dishing, so great to speak with you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Royal watchers are gearing up for this month's Trooping the Colour celebrations, marking King Charles' official birthday. But Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have reportedly been left off the guest list for the second year in a row. Riley Sullivan is a reporter here at skynews.com.au and he's always across the latest headlines from the royal family. Riley, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Okay, so King Charles will soon mark his second Trooping the Colour since becoming monarch, and most of the royal family are expected to appear on the Buckingham Palace balcony as usual. But who will we be seeing on the balcony and who's been left off the list?
Right, so Charles is gearing up for his second Trooping the Colour. This is going to be a huge moment for the King. Obviously, he's been battling cancer in recent months. We haven't seen him. He's slowly been returning to his royal duties. This is going to be the highlight, I think, of the year for the royals. This is Charles on the balcony. It's the iconic Trooping the Colour balcony appearance. Unfortunately, this year it will be quite a small selection of royals. We will not be seeing Princess Catherine, unfortunately. We'll likely just be seeing King Charles, Queen Camilla, Prince William, possibly the Wales children, and then Princess Anne and her husband, and possibly Prince Edward and Duchess Sophie. So we'll not be seeing Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They were not invited. Obviously, they're not working royals anymore. If things had gone a bit better maybe a month ago when Harry visited London and there was a bit of a reconciliation, who knows what could have happened. But as it stands, we won't be seeing Harry and Meghan.
Well, look, I don't think too many people in the UK will be sad about that.
No.
Okay, look, this week a Sussex insider claimed that Meghan Markle is struggling to hire staff to help get her new product line, American Riviera Orchard, off the ground. Why is Meghan Markle's new brand at such a standstill?
Right, so we heard this week, actually it was a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how Meghan was struggling with the criticism to her brand, and this week we've heard that has really kind of includes the staff aspect of it. Apparently she's struggling to find a team. There were big hopes that she'd take on Gwyneth Paltrow's group line, that it would be this huge venture, that she'd have creatives, chefs, all of the different sort of lifestyle experts on board. And apparently she's just struggling to get the staff. I think part of it is probably a lack of direction. You know, she launched the jams a couple months ago. She sent out 50 jars, but, you know, there's still nothing for sale. So I still think it's a bit of an R&D phase. I don't think it's as maybe commercially ready as we thought it would be, and as maybe as she thought it would be at this point.
Interesting that she started doing the marketing and the teasing, you know, for the past few months, really. We've been speaking about it, and then you just can't buy anything.
Right. It's almost like she kind of got a bit ahead of herself maybe, because obviously, you know, when you're launching any kind of product, I mean, there's a lot of that goes on in the back end, and I think she's more, I guess, about the surface and the marketing, but I don't think she's maybe as, you know, interested in the hard yards.
In the hard work. You know, that Instagram has to be up and running, but actually getting the products available to sell is a whole other thing. So look, good luck to Meghan. Look, it's not the only issue that she's got at the moment, because it appears that Harry and Meghan are trying to undertake a huge public relations turnaround after the Nigeria visit, and have hired some industry heavyweights to clean up their image. Who are the new hires, and is the strategy paying off?
Right. Well, this is, I think, actually leads into what we were just talking about with Meghan's product line. It almost seems like she's pulled back a bit and made a bit of a change. And I reckon it's to do with these new PR hires. They hired two big wigs, one of them, Charlie Gibson. It was written up in all the newspapers. He's very well known in the UK. He actually has contacted us here at skynews.com.au. He's reached out before. He sometimes reaches out to us to kind of offer maybe additional information about a story. So that was quite a surprise. You know, it was unprecedented until quite recently for the Sussexes to sort of have such a direct line with media outlets. Obviously, they have a complicated relationship with the press. But it seems like Mr. Gibson and this new team are really prioritising turning it around in the media. The Nigeria trip was a great example of that. I think even the naysayers could say that, you know, when you see Meghan and Harry over there in Nigeria on this tour, that it was pretty special. And it's interesting the impact of that trip. You know, I was just reading yesterday in Vanity Fair, which is another quite esteemed publication, one that hasn't always been that positive towards Meghan and Harry. And they had quite a long feature at the moment that's very positive, talking about the Nigeria trip. So whether that's the influence of these PR people or just a general kind of turning of the tides, I think it's paying dividends for Meghan and Harry.
Well, I think the new hires have their work cut out for them when it comes
to... Long way to go yet.
To Meghan and Harry, but look, we'll watch this space. And the Sussexes marked Princess Lilibet's 3rd birthday on Monday. What do we know about the celebrations, and why did the entire royal family snub Lilibet's big day? Right, so Lilibet turned 3. Time really flies. You know, Meghan was actually pregnant with Lilibet when she did the infamous Oprah Winfrey interview. So that just goes to show, you know, how fast time goes by. But yeah, so Lilibet turned 3. She celebrated, as far as we know, with her family and friends in California. Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, was believed to be there. Unfortunately, it wasn't marked by the royal family. And this isn't personally targeted at Lilibet. This was just a broader change. I think last year they decided that, you know, just to alleviate confusion about whose birthday is celebrated, whose isn't. They really don't mark birthdays unless it's a working royal now, which is, I guess, sad in a way. You know, sometimes I wonder with Archie and Lilibet, they don't really know their grandfather, King Charles. They don't have a lot of connection to the UK. But I mean, you know, by all accounts, she had a great day. Yeah, look, she looks gorgeous, and that is the sad part about it, isn't it? When King Charles is missing out, knowing his grandchildren that live in California now because of the decision that Harry and Meghan made. But look, there's speculation that Harry could be writing another memoir after the global success of Spare. Why do insiders believe that Harry's working on another tell-all? Right, well, there's always been rumours that, all right, is Harry going to kind of continue the bombshells? Is there going to be another book? And a royal author recently pointed out something very interesting, which is when you do read Spare, that there's these kind of gaps, like especially in the lead up and the coverage of their wedding. He doesn't really mention that in Spare. So there's clearly gaps there. And some people believe that this is really a sign that Harry has sort of kept a few things back for another book. If he does, I mean, I'm sure it'll fly off the shelves. Obviously, Spare broke all-time sales records last year. It moved something like 1.3 million copies in the first 3 days of release. I mean, it was a huge windfall. It netted Harry at least £20 million that we know of, just through the book deal and the early sales.
Who knows? Obviously, it was an audiobook. It continues to sell thousands of copies. But I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it was such a windfall for them. And with the Netflix deal coming up for renewal next year, you know, who knows where that's going to go. So it could be a good way for them to sort of secure another big sort of chunk of money.
Amazing that there's still more to tell, because there was certainly lots of information in that book, Spare. I didn't read the entire thing, but obviously just the news clips that you see. Not sure how this one will go. We'll wait and see. Obviously, it brought in a lot of money for them. King Charles is battling with Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson to convince the Yorks to move out of the Royal Lodge. Why is the King so adamant about evicting his brother?
Right. Well, this has been an ongoing story now for over a year. Obviously, Prince Andrew was, you know, he's living in disgrace. He was stripped of his royal duties, and part of that is he's not really being paid by the monarchy anymore because he doesn't complete any royal duties. So his finances are unclear, but he does live in one of the grandest royal homes. He lives in Royal Lodge. It's a huge home on the Windsor estate. It was the Queen Mother's old house. And I'm sure, you know, it was fine for him to upkeep this home when he was a working royal, but now that he's very much in the shadows, he doesn't necessarily have the money. And there's been signs of that. You know, there were some photos circulating in the British press showing the dilapidation of the house, the exterior, and these royal homes, you know, they need millions of pounds for upkeep. Apparently his staffers have called it the money pit just because it requires such constant maintenance, but apparently he's just insistent on not downsizing. King Charles is very keen to move Andrew and his ex-wife Fergie on. He doesn't want them to live there anymore. Some people think that Charles wants to move the Yorks out of the house because he wants to make it available possibly for Prince William and Princess Catherine.
Right.
So that's a bit of a theory. But in a more immediate sense, I just don't think that Andrew and Fergie have the money, frankly.
Right.
But they've managed to sort of stave off the eviction for now. They've agreed to put in a couple £100,000 to do immediate repairs. And we saw new photos of scaffolding on the house, and those repairs are ongoing. So it seems like for the time being, Andrew and Fergie are going to be staying at Royal Lodge.
Riley Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour once again.
Thank you.
So much royal news to get through this week. Great to speak with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.